On the last episode of Hops and Gnarly Brewing, we started exploring the world of Saison by experimenting with liquid malt extract. It turns out you can make a pretty decent beer with extract, and it's totally worth considering when brewing a Saison. But I wasn't telling you the whole truth. This batch of extract Saison was actually 5 gallons, and I split it between 2 fermenters because I have another question I want to explore. One of the things that you hear about with Saison yeast is that it's temperamental and likes to stall out or fail to reach the correct final gravity. And one of the reasons for this is the yeast's sensitivity to pressure. When you seal a fermenter with an airlock, you inevitably create a small amount of pressure within the fermenter. How much pressure probably depends on the type of airlock you're using and the amount of liquid within the airlock and the fermenter itself. The idea here is as the yeast metabolizes the wort, the pressure increases within the fermenter until eventually it starts negatively impacting the yeast. After a while, the yeast can't eat as fast, so the pressure starts decreasing until eventually the yeast recovers and starts metabolizing regularly and increasing the pressure once again. This lengthy pattern makes a lot of brewers think their fermentation has stalled out altogether, and a lot of people say it can be avoided with open fermentation. So here's my question. Does open fermentation produce a better Saison? But before we see how things turned out, let's go back and make some beer. This beer started out with some spring water that I picked up at the grocery store and some liquid malt extract from Brew. I used 80% Pilsen Light and 20% Bavarian wheat, targeting an original gravity of 1041. After everything was thoroughly mixed in, I brought the wort to a boil and added the first hop addition, 42 grams of Saison, which brought us up to about 23 IBUs. At the end of the boil, I turned the element off and let the temperature free fall to 180 Fahrenheit while adding another 28 grams of Saison, which brought us up to about 30 IBUs. After a 20-minute whirlpool, I chilled, oxygenated, and transferred the wort. Just as before, I pitched a similar amount of Imperial Rustic and let the beer ferment at room temperature until final gravity was reached. Now, let's see about that question. Does open fermentation produce a better Saison? On the right, we have the extract batch that was fermented with an airlock. And on the left, we have the open fermented extract batch that was simply covered with aluminum foil. Both beers are a rich amber color, and I really shook the open fermentation can up putting the label on it, but otherwise, I think they'd both be pretty nice and clear, like the one on the right. It smells like juicy fruit bubblegum, and the flavor adds some spicy phenols and sweet malt. This one is pretty good, and as I switched to the open fermented version, I really don't notice a single difference. This one finished just a couple days before the others, and I was pretty stoked on the yeast performance, but tasting them side by side, I definitely can't tell them apart. So, it looks like open fermentation can make a pretty good Saison, but using an airlock can too. I'm guessing as you scale this up to larger batch sizes, it has more of an impact, but for me, I could go either way. It's kind of fun to ferment without an airlock, but part of me thinks it's easier to just underfill an S-lock. For now, I think I'll pay attention to some other things like oxygenating the wort and pitching the right amount of yeast. This episode of Hops and Gnarly Brewing was made possible by these awesome partners. If you like this video, let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you again soon.